we just get Ishmaels. We get the Hagar experience. Because God had promised to Abraham that he would bring forth a son of promise, and he couldn't see it, and he thought, I'll do my way. And how much trouble this world is in because of that child, Ishmael. This is the way of man. It brings so much sorrow. But the second thing they complained about was they loathed this light bread. In fact, they said, there is no bread. And I thought that was interesting. They said, there is no bread and we loathe this light bread. Because they had looked at it as such a loathsome thing that they didn't even refer to it as bread anymore. And as we can keep comparing the illustrations, that along the way of the Christian life, there comes a time when I've heard all the gospel before. I've gone through all the books of the Bible, I've gone through all the stories, I've heard all these sermons, and I need food. And this happens at a time of extended Christian experience. And when did the fiery serpents come? At the beginning or at the end? At the end. And it's at the end that you get tired. It's at the end where you get weary of the message. And we go through the message, especially when we're repeating and enlarging. Some of you could be tired again of hearing some more points that would be the same as I have brought out before. But will you loathe this bread? Will you go, oh, we've already heard that. You've already said that. You're repeating yourself. They loathe this bread. People can become gospel hardened. Even ministers' children. They know the stories, and by the time they come to the teenagers, we know it all. And this is what happened to the children of Israel. They loathed this light bread. And secondly, it's interesting, it says they called it light bread. And it's almost how it reads, we loathe this light bread. It's almost a mockery of what it is, this light bread. Almost to say that light bread, this is unsubstantial for me. It's light. It's just something that's fluffy. There's nothing to it. And that was the unconscious sort of thing that come across when I read this light bread. And they really wanted some heavy food that would heat up their blood and that would cause disease. And that would... The flesh is really heavy, extremely heavy. And that's what they did. They fell a-lusting for the flesh pots of Egypt. They wanted the flesh meats of carnal reason. They wanted their own experience. And as we heard from Brother Marcus, the leeks and the garlics, they wanted to eat the leeks and the garlics. Perhaps that was like gossip. That's real meat, to gossip about people, to consume other people and their reputation. And they were longing for the leeks and the garlics, and even the cucumbers of suspicion and conjecture. They didn't want what God had given them, the word, the bread. And they said, this is light. And people often come to the gospel and there is many critics to the Bible. And they'll criticize the Bible and they'll go into their philosophy. Because people are looking for something deeper than the divine. They're looking for something more profound than the infinite. They're looking for something more liberal than free grace. But there is nothing that the human can consume that is better than the manna, the angels' food. When men ate angels' food. There's nothing better than that. But yet, they ridiculed it. And they murmured. They murmured. They wanted heavy meat. And we know that meat poisons the blood. Well, they got poisoned blood all right. Because when we murmur, it is like a prayer. When Jesus was being crucified, what did the crowd cry? His blood be on us and on our children's children. And what happened to Jerusalem in AD 70? And we know why. Because when they made this complaint about Jesus and they just said, get rid of him, that cry, that murmur, that complaint is a prayer. So we must consider very carefully when we get weary of the good and we start to make some complaints to God, that we would fear to say such things lest he actually gave them to us. But they got what they wanted. They got their poisoned blood. They sent the serpents of sin and lust and pride came and bit them. This murmuring brings in the snakes. It stops God's protection and brings in those things which would harm you anyway. And the serpent bites them. And what sort of bite was it? The word fiery, we can take it two ways. We can either say, well, fiery could be the colour of the serpent or what it felt like when it was bitten. And I believe it was probably the latter rather than the former, or both. That when they were bitten, this fiery poison put them into a mortal state. It was a mortal wound, correct? Murmuring brings a mortal wound. To complain, and God takes his protection. God removed a lot of his protection from Job, except the protection of his life, and how much was destroyed? Everything but what was protected. So if God takes the protection from their life, what would Satan do first? He'd kill you. So the fact we're here, we have travelled so far together, let us praise the name of the Lord, that he has brought us here safely. And it is a temptation. And as we broke down in Tamworth, and I felt like grumbling, and in my heart I did. And then I realised as I studied, oh Lord, forgive me. Because I was tired and I was a little frustrated with the vehicle that broke down. And the Lord can forgive. This is the whole lesson. You can be bitten, but if we will look to Jesus, he can save us. So when the snake bites, the snake puts its fangs through your flesh, and at the end of the fangs it injects poison. And this poison, what is it? The Bible tells us. And first we can establish who is the serpent. Revelation 12:9 says that old serpent, the devil. So we can understand that. So this injection from the fangs of the serpent injects what into us? We know it's poison, but what is it? In John chapter 8 and verse 44. The Gospel of John, chapter 8 and verse 44. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. So what is this poison? When a poison comes into something, then there's a reaction because of the